Greetings people, you're watching Music as a Journey. I'm Peter Scove, and today's video is going to be a special one, another internationally themed video, if you will. I mentioned a little bit earlier this year that I was thinking to do a series of videos talking about groups or artists that I have from specific countries, and although I was actually planning to do it next year, a certain Mr. Stefan73 held a contest where you had to introduce Dutch bands in your video, and so I kind of jumped on a little bit early there by doing a video about Dutch bands that I have in my collection. So thinking about that, I decided, I picked out some other countries to do, and by luck of the draw, today is Australia. I've actually been working on preparing lots of notes and material for a video that I'm really excited about doing, and I'm still waiting for some stuff to come in through the mail. So until then, I'm going to be really excited about talking about Australian artists in my collection. As well, this video is aimed at Mr. Ben Rankins down in Australia, who features a lot of Australian artists, maybe mostly Australian artists on his channel. But he also sometimes mentions some from the next door neighbors across the water there in New Zealand. So for today's video, I'm going to take a look at Australian bands and New Zealand bands that I have in my collection. Bit of a note at the beginning, not everything is right here in my hands. One thing I can't find, one thing I don't remember where I put it, and the other thing is a download only. So, when the time comes, I'll just have to talk about it and show a picture here. Okay, let's get started. We're going to go in chronological order from the oldest material to the most recent. So, over here I have the very best of the Easy Beats, Friday on My Mind. You might recognize this fellow here. This is Mr. George Young, older brother of Angus and Malcolm Young. They were in some famous Australian band. This is the Easy Beats, probably Australia's... let's see, I'm not going to say answer to the Beatles, because Mr. Ben Rankins is going to correct me and he's going to say everybody knows they're way better than the Beatles. But anyway, a 1960s Australian rock band. The songs, there were a couple of kind of a little bit more garagey type rockers with a little more edginess to the guitar, which is the reason why I bought this. But actually when I heard Friday on My Mind, I realized what a classic that is, and I know that song. And what's interesting is that Friday on My Mind is the only song that really has that kind of approach to it. And it made me think, as I look back on some bands of the 1960s who are especially famous for a particular song, quite often that song is really different from the rest of the album that it appeared on. For example, The Animals' House of the Rising Sun. I thought, that's actually a really cool song. I wonder what the rest of the album is like. And the rest of the album is your typical British 60s blues type album, 1964 or whatever, right? So yeah, I think that happens sometimes in the 1960s. The band releases one song that is really different from everything else they've done, and it becomes very, very famous, and it kind of makes you wonder, why didn't they do more stuff like that? But anyway, the Easy Beats with George Young, the oldest of the Australian artists in my collection. We're not out of the 60s yet, though. We're going to take a look here at a group called Zoot. Zoot started out, they had a different name. I think they were called Down the Line or something like that. They started out in 1964 in Adelaide. They had some member changes as they moved over to Melbourne, and they got a new manager who thought that they would all look really good wearing full pink suits. Well, it kind of worked for them. I think it was in 1968 they made their first appearance dressed all in pink. And there was all this pink theme about them, and it actually got the attention of a lot of teenage girls. However, it also got negative attention from a lot of full-grown men who thought they looked more like fruity pansies in their pink outfits rather than, cool rock stars. Well, a little bit later, they got a new member on board, a young fellow by the name of Rick Springfield. And shortly after he joined, they decided that they were going to ditch their suits because they were just not being taken seriously going around dressed in pink all the time. So they burned their pink clothes in 1970, I think it was, on a television program. And then they switched their style from being a more poppy type band into a more heavy rock type band. And on this collection here, the last few songs, I think it's from, well, Flyin' is starting to get a bit psychedelic, and that's track 10. But it's once you get down to The Freak and Eleanor Rigby that things start getting pretty heavy. In fact, The Freak is a pretty fast-paced chugging song, except that it alternates in the middle. It goes over to this kind of quieter acoustic piece before going back to a fast-paced chugger. You can actually find a video of them performing this on a TV show on YouTube. The sound quality is not so great, but you can hear what it sounds like. And the final track is the big one, and the reason why I bought this, Eleanor Rigby. They do a cover of the Beatles' Eleanor Rigby in fantastic 1970-71 heavy metal style. It's a brilliant, brilliant execution of that song, and that's the reason why I bought this album. Interestingly, another member of the band, his name is Piss Piddle. He would go on to start the Little River Band. And, of course, Rick Springfield would head across to the US and become famous as a solo artist and an actor. And as a little bit of personal trivia, the very first rock album I ever owned, excluding the Royal Guardsmen sing Snoopy versus the Red Baron, was an album called Rock 82. And Rock 82 was part of the K-Tel company in Canada. They put out all these compilations of rock songs. I can tell it was from Canada because there was always about 30% Canadian content on those albums. And I had Rock 82, which included Jessie's Girl by Rick Springfield and Take It Easy on Me by the Little River Band. So, Little River Band and Jessie's Girl, Little River Band and Rick Springfield, both having members that were formerly in Zoot. Alright, moving along. So, 1971. I actually picked this up a couple of years back when I was trying to fatten up my 1971 album collection. This is Human Instinct from New Zealand, and I think it's their third album. It's called Pins in It. I actually heard their previous album, something guitar, psychedelic guitar, something like that anyway. And it sounded pretty cool, but I never bought the album. So when I was looking at fattening up my 1971 albums collection, I thought, hey, let's pick up Human Instinct here and their album Pins in It. And quite honestly, it's okay. Although I haven't actually listened to it so much, but I see there's a song on here called the Nile Song, which I believe is a cover of the Pink Floyd one. But Pink Floyd are just much heavier. Anyway, I was listening to a couple of tracks the other day, and yeah, it kind of reminds me of some early 70s Japanese bands as well. Like, there's a lot of groove to it, not particularly heavy. Yeah, but anyway, Human Instinct. Okay. I'd have nothing else to say about it because I haven't really listened to the album for the last 2 years. So here we go. This is one that's worthy of mention. Oh, this is Buffalo, and an album called Volcanic Rock with some naked guy with no penis holding a giant penis over his head on the top of a volcano. Because nothing says we're from Australia like a naked guy holding a giant penis over his head. So anyway, yeah, Volcanic Rock. This was probably one of Australia's most famous early 70s heavy rock acts. And they had, I don't know how many albums they did, but I think this is probably the most famous one. And there's a song on here called Shylock, which is probably their most famous one that I know of anyway. Really good early 70s heavy rockin' band. Cool. Buffalo. Okay. All right, I've put in a receipt here because that means that there's something missing. I always liked that song. What's it called? Down Under? I Come From a Land Down Under? I forget the song title now. I always liked that song by the band Men at Work. I almost said Men Without Hats, but they're from Quebec. Men at Work. I always liked that song. And I was listening to it on YouTube a couple of years back, and I just played the video over and over again because I really liked it. And I thought, hell with it, I'm going to just buy the album. So I did. And I remember, what was it? I forgot what it is. Who Can It Be Now? I remember the song Who Can It Be Now? Who Can It Be Now was not a bad song. So I thought, okay, we've got Down Under on there, which I love. It's a great song. Who Can It Be Now? Not a bad song. Johnny Be Good, which I didn't really care too much for. But I thought, take my chances. Could be a decent album. And as it turned out, I don't really remember any of the other songs. But I really love that Down Under song. I think from start to finish, it's just a great song. And one of my favorite parts is when he's singing, he said, do you come from a land down under? And then he goes, yeah, yeah. But the way he says it, it's like, yeah, yeah, like now you're getting it. Now you know what we're talking about. And in the video, he's lying on the floor in a cell in Bombay, and someone's trying to give him a dirty old shoe. And then the guy says to him, like, do you come from a land down under? And of course they're singing. And as he starts getting up off the floor going like, yeah, yeah, like his face is showing exactly the expression you would imagine in the voice in the song. I just thought that was really funny, actually, the way his face mimicked the tone of the voice in the song. Anyway, I have the CD. I don't remember where I put it. I have been shuffling stuff around here this year as more and more stuff came in, and things that were in boxes got moved out of boxes because other things were taking up too much space, and things with labels, the labels no longer accurately say what the contents of the boxes are. So I have it somewhere, and I searched for it, but I kept taking boxes out thinking, okay, now I'm done, putting them back in, and then, oh, I forgot about this one. And okay, I have it. I have the CD. The cover looks like this. There you go. Okay, so next up, we're going to have to skip a couple of decades here. We're going up to the early 2000s now with the full-length debut Get Born by Jet. The song, Are You Gonna Be My Girl? Jet were, I think they were kind of known in Australia, but they weren't really getting known internationally until Are You Gonna Be My Girl got featured in an iPod commercial. And that's how I got to know the song. And I thought it was really cool because in the early 2000s, I was not really so thrilled about a lot of the music that was out there, and I wanted to hear something new and exciting, and I picked up this CD and I really loved it. This is really good, again, kind of retro rock style, leaning a lot to the 1970s, but just really good crunchy rock and roll with a couple of really decent ballads on here too. Recently I did a video of like 10 favorite albums from the 2000s, and I actually was going to include this one too. And it should have been included, but I was going to do only 10, and I knew this one was coming up in another video soon, so I did not mention it. But here we go, Jet Get Born. I did actually buy their second album, but I remember thinking that it just didn't have the diversity or excitement of the first one, and there was actually only one song on it I liked, and so I ended up sending it on its way to Disc Union, where all CDs that I tire of go. Sorry, Jet, but I really love the first one. But another band that was really, really cool out of Australia is Wolf Mother. And a friend of mine, I mentioned this in my last video, a friend of mine let me hear Sundial from the second album, Cosmic Egg. And I thought, what a fantastic song, like so heavy, like really heavy stoner rock. And I bought the album and thought, wow, so many really cool songs on here. So I bought the debut and really different sounding albums. This one is more like if Uriah Heep brought in the keyboard player from The Doors, and had him come in as a guest on a couple of songs. Just like really kind of heavy, early 70s heavy rock style, whereas this one has a more modern, heavy stoner rock style to it. After this, Andrew Stockdale, the main dude, went and did a solo album, which I thought was going to be really great, and I ended up not liking it, so it also went to Disc Union. And after that, I didn't pick up anything else that they were doing, but I did hear a song of theirs called Victoria from their fourth album, which I thought sounded also really cool, and I was humming and hawing about getting the fourth album, and so far I haven't. But, it might be good to go back and revisit. Favorite song off this one here is a song called Colossal. That is just such a freaking killer song. There's so many cool moments in it. And just so many cool moments in it. Love that song, Colossal, Wolf Mother. Okay. Am I missing something? No, I'm not. So another band here, this is a band actually out of Perth, Carnival. What the heck was this album called now? Sound Awake, right. Carnival, I forget how they started out. Were they kind of metalcore? Anyway, they're one of these bands. They've got the really heavy sound, little bit on the kind of progressive technical side, kind of a bit like Haken, but the clean vocal singing is probably more like clean vocal singing in metalcore, which I honestly don't particularly like so much. But overall, the music on here is really cool. This is an album that I listened to once. I got it with a bunch of stuff, put it aside, came back to it, thought, yeah, it's pretty good, put it aside, forgot about it, came back to it, thought, yeah, it's pretty cool. And I just keep doing that. I actually have not really allowed myself to totally get into this album, but I think it's probably just because the vocal style is not exactly to my preference. Not bad singing, just I'm not so keen on that style. But the music, yeah, music similar to Haken in a way. Okay, Carnival. Now then, into the progressive stuff. This is Unitopia. They had a few albums out in the 2000s. This one, Artificial, Symphonic Prog, featuring the very talented Sean Timms on keyboards, and Mark Trueck as a, I don't know, what does Mark do? He does a lot of stuff. I think he plays guitar, sings, writes songs, and he's a pretty talented guy. He is also basically the main person behind the whole progressive, what the heck is it called now? The United Progressive Fraternity. Oh, actually, I should have included that one. Do I have it on the shelf here? Well, anyway, United Progressive Fraternity, which is basically a core band with loads of guests coming in on the various tracks. Ah, I did have it. United Progressive Fraternity. And a whole ton of people, including John Davison of Yes. And I think there's a Steve Hackett on here. And all these faces are all people contributing to this album. I think this is the second album, Planetary Overload, Loss. The third one, Hope, might be out now. And my friend Gordo Bennett is actually playing on this one. And my deceased friend Colin Tench, I believe, played on the previous one. Okay, so there it is. United Progressive Fraternity, headed by Marty Truax, and also joined by Sean Timms of Unitopia. Southern Empire. I believe they have a third album out now too. This was their debut. Does it open up? Oh yeah, it opens up. It opens up all right. CD and a DVD in there. Really brilliant, fantastic symphonic prog. Sean Timms doing some amazing keyboard and piano solos on this album here. Really loved it. And then their second album, Civilization. This one I felt got a little bit, still the same kind of symphonic prog style as the other one, but I felt a little bit more poppy in some ways. Just maybe some of the more, what is like melody hooks in the vocals, some really great hooks. The opening track on here, Goliath's Moon, that's it. That's a really cool one if you want to check that out. And my favorite one from here, I have to remember the name. How Long? That's right. How Long? How Long? Right? How Long? Yes, you should check out How Long from Southern Empire's debut, and you should check out Goliath's Moon from Civilization. Both have videos on YouTube. Okay, Southern Empire for your Australian progressive symphonic prog type thing. All right, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here. I've got to mention, okay, I got to mention two things now before I forget about them. One of them is a band called Outside In from New Zealand. When I was writing a lot of reviews on Prog Archives a few years ago, I would get messages from bands asking if I would accept their download and occasionally accept a CD and review their albums. So Outside In, a band, progressive, kind of melodic rock, progressive rock band from New Zealand, asked if I would review their album, which I did. And I remember the first time thinking, yeah, it's all right. And then I listened to it again and I thought, actually, there's more going on in the music than I originally noticed. Now, I haven't listened to it. I listened to it like a track or two the other day, but I haven't listened to it since I reviewed it a few years ago. So I really don't remember much about it, but I will mention it here. Outside In from New Zealand. This is the album cover for the album that I reviewed. You can read my review on Prog Archives if you want, or you can just go straight out and try to find out what the music sounds like for yourself. Okay, also from New Zealand. I have been to New Zealand twice. I got married in New Zealand in 2008. And I think it was the first time we went there. We rented a car and we brought some CDs with us. And then we found out that all the rental cars in New Zealand didn't have CD players. They had cassette players. Wow. Okay. So we stopped at a gas station somewhere and they had this compilation double cassette of New Zealand artists. We thought, well, this is great. We bought it. I remember it included Crowded House. It included Split Enz, some of the bands that I knew from the early 80s. And there was some country stuff and various different styles of music. I actually still have it. And I really should have bought the CD, but you know, we had a car with a cassette player. So I have it around here in a box somewhere and I can't remember. It's probably in this like walk-in closet here with lots of other boxes, but it was pretty cool. But the last track was by a fella named Darcy Clay, and it was really so clever. It was a song called Jesus, I Was Evil. And it was all done at home, and it really sounds like a home project. And we're talking about, I think, the 1990s. The guy is at home playing drums, playing bass, playing guitar, and singing. And it does sound pretty choppy. It's not very smooth. The bass sounds like it's trying to keep up with the song, and the drumming sounds like it's getting lost by the bass a bit. But it had such charm to it. And it was like, he's I don't remember, he was saying things like, I used to help. Oh, no, he used to say things about like how evil he was. And it's all like really like trite stuff. It's nothing serious. But then he says he's changed his ways, and now he helps old ladies cross the street and this kind of thing. It's just such a funny song. And apparently he actually released an EP of 4 songs that he recorded by himself at home. And it became kind of an underground legend in New Zealand. But then, why? He went and committed suicide, apparently. So, very unfortunate that. Yeah, but anyway, Darcy Clay, Jesus, I Was Evil. If you can find it, I haven't looked for it recently, but maybe it's out there on YouTube or something. Fun to check out. Okay, those are the 3. That's right. Men at Work. The CD is around here somewhere. New Zealand compilation. The cassette is in there somewhere. And Outside In from New Zealand, it's download only. So the last band to talk about then, coming out of New Zealand here, this is the Datsuns. A really killer hard rock act out of New Zealand, coming out with this whole like retro rock style of the early 2000s, right in there with bands like Jet or The Darkness. Darkness a little bit more on the flamboyant side. But yeah, really good, solid hard rock act. The very first one I picked up was actually their second album, this one here. What the heck was it called anyway? Out of Sight, Out of Mind, which was actually produced by John Paul Jones. And at the time, I remember I saw an interview with them. Saw or read, I forget now. And they were talking about John Paul Jones being of Led Zeppelin. And the band was kind of making a joke saying that New Zealand is just so remote from the rest of the world that for them, Led Zeppelin was a brand new thing. Obviously, it was a joke. But anyway, yeah, this is a really cool album. There's a song on here called Hong Kong Fury. I think it kind of reminds me of that old Hanna-Barbera cartoon Hong Kong Phooey. That dog that did Kung Fu. But anyway, Hong Kong Fury. Yeah, really kind of over-the-top band. Like the vocalist just sounds like he's going to blow his vocal cords out anytime with some of his vocal antics. But pretty cool band. So the debut, the second album. I think this was the third one, Smoke and Mirrors, which I just picked up recently. I don't have the 4th one, and the 5th one is called Death Rattle Boogie, and since then they've released another 2 albums. I believe they have 7 full-length albums now. Really good, solid, hard-rocking act from New Zealand. And that wraps up my Australia and New Zealand collection. I know it's not a lot. There have been a lot of bands I've heard about along the way that I thought maybe I might want to check out, but can only spend so much money before you don't have any more. So that's it. Ben Rankins, hello to you. Good day to you, sir. And I'm not going to try to do an Australian accent because I'll just embarrass myself. And hello to New Zealand. Okay, everyone. Thanks for watching this video. And I really hope I'll be back next weekend with my video that I've been working on now for the last 3 or 4 weeks. All right. Take care all. Bye. I think wasn't there one more Australian band I wanted to talk about? I think I'll probably remember after I start editing the video. Anyway, whatever.